Hi, I'm Joe Ross with CNR News. We're broadcasting live from Lansing, the capital city of Michigan. Today we have experts all across the Midwest who are here to explore the challenges and the solutions to improve Michigan's rural broadband. We cannot leave the rural areas behind in the digital launch that's going on in this country. Our first guest is going to be Kevin Shane, the CEO of ACD.net. Our next guest is later in the program is going to be Eric Frederick of Connected Nation. These are two nationally known experts on this topic. But first, we're going to talk to B.B. Reisdorf. B.B., what are some of the myths and what are some of the realities of the digital divide that you've studied?
Yeah, thank you. So one of the biggest myths is that we only have a divide between rural and urban areas at this point. We still have a lot of divides actually in urban areas themselves as well. So we have to look at both things at the same time.
So what in rural areas, what do residents out there, I mean, if you build it, they will come. It's great that we're going to have broadband, but what are they going to do with it when they get it?
Right. So the most common uses are actually information seeking. Education is really high up there. Shopping is one of the most common ones as well, which is nice, especially if you live in a rural area somewhere where you don't have the shops.
Right. What about distance learning?
Yeah, that's a big one too, absolutely. So it just opens up this plethora of things you can do, right? So as soon as you have the access, it's all about what you do with it.
How about the take rate? Are you concerned at all that rural residents will be slow and there will be even more of a digital divide going forward?
I'm a little worried at this point, yeah, because we've been dealing with this divide for quite a while now, and we're still trying to find solutions for it.
Are there areas of Michigan that are getting it? Are there rural areas? I know ACD.net is building out into the rural areas, and they've got a big take rate of local residents. Are there some that you could point to?
Alpena County is actually right on it. I think Eric is an expert who can tell you a little more about that.
Okay, good. We'll get into that. Thank you so much for coming on the show today.
Thank you for having me.
Okay, she just teed up Eric Frederick of Connected Nation. This is a guy that is an expert on working with local communities. He's got a background in planning to get local officials engaged in this topic to bring rural broadband to their citizens. Could you tell me, what are some of the planning steps a community needs to take? I mean, the initial steps.
Yeah, I think it's a recognition that the communities can do something. It's about communities coming to the table and working to develop public-private partnerships with internet service providers, working with their residents, working with their businesses and others in the community to really take hold of their broadband destiny, if you will, and making sure that they're addressing not just the access to infrastructure, which is absolutely critical, but also the demand of that infrastructure and what they're using it for.
And we're going to hear about that later on, because a lot of fiber optic networks that bring broadband to rural areas have failed. So you need this interesting. You got to find a capitalist. You got to find a tech firm to bring that in. Isn't that one of the critical elements?
That's right. So we've had an expansion of broadband over the last few years, but the problem is we're to a point where we're expanding into areas where household and business density is low. So we need risk takers and we need communities to come together to bring something to the table as well, to partner with folks who are willing to take that risk and expand into rural areas.
Eric, are there certain areas of Michigan that have done this well? They've taken your advice. They've worked with Connected Nation. They've worked with Connected Michigan to move the ball forward and get broadband out into rural areas?
Yeah, absolutely. So in northern parts of the state where they've struggled with broadband for many years, the communities really have rallied around this call. In Emmett County and Alpena County and other places in the state where they've really taken charge of their broadband destiny and started working with providers and others to come to the table and really expand into rural areas.
Yeah, in fact, Northeast, for our viewers today, keep in mind, Northeast Michigan, they just got telephone poles. There's many areas that just got telephone poles in recent years. So that was a really struggling area. And I know MSU and your organization, you did some serious work to get that going, didn't you?
Yeah, absolutely. So we brought lots of stakeholders to the table, including broadband providers, to have this conversation about broadband. And now they're taking charge of that and working to expand their communities into the digital economy.
Okay, and if somebody wants to get a hold of, if the community here in Michigan or in the Midwest wants to learn more about this, contact, just Google Connected Michigan or Connected Nation. You're going to find this guy. Thank you so much for coming on the show. Our last guest is a guy that has built out networks throughout the Midwest. He's got thousands of miles of fiber optic that is bringing broadband to big cities and rural areas alike. Kevin, ACD, you guys, a lot of people have failed. A lot of people have failed to bring broadband to rural Michigan. But how the heck have you guys, what are you guys doing to do this?
Well, it's really about keeping costs low and also doing strong financial analysis regarding the deployments and implementing the latest technology.
Okay, you're talking about a business. You're talking about you need a business.
You got to have a business case and a business model to do it. You know, a lot of when we see rural areas like rural governments and those types of things trying to get into the business of doing broadband, you know, the key thing is to really understand the cost analysis of this and understand what infrastructure actually costs to do it. And, you know, a lot of times it's not that there's not broadband, it's just not ideal broadband. It may be wireless instead of fiber optic. It may be cable instead of fiber optic, right?
So there's a mishmash out there.
Yeah, well, the mishmash helps. You do want multiple different technologies to try to address all areas, mobility, but ultimately what a lot of this is a combination of technology, engineering, and finance. Right, and we need to bring those three pieces together in order to build out the rural areas.
So it does take municipal people. It takes a company like ACD, and then what's the third element?
Also finance, right? In areas where it just doesn't make economic sense for private sector companies to invest in highly rural areas, at some point, you know, government's got to step in with capital funding if you want broadband deployed there. Really the wrong way we think to do it is to create a government organized broadband type company, right?
Well, haven't there been a couple of systems in the Midwest that have had government government broadband systems where the city owned it or the regions and it failed?
Yeah, it's you know, the success rate is relatively low. You know, for example, in Utah, they tried to do a whole statewide broadband network that got sold to Google, right? And a lot of these end up, you know, governments tend to misjudge the amount of capital investment that it requires and the ongoing maintenance and engineering, right? And so really when we look at small communities to invest in, we invest in a lot of small communities, Dowagiac, you know, Charlotte, Hillsdale, those types of communities. Really we look at, you know, does the community have their stuff together? Are they fixing the roads? Are they fixing the sidewalks? Is the municipal infrastructure in good condition? And until those things, you know, you really shouldn't try to expand the scope of government unless if you know that those things are taken care of really well already, right?
Kevin, those are some really good points. If you're a city official and you want to bring rural broadband to your area, definitely just Google ACD or go on to acd.net and look for Kevin Shane and give them a call. Kevin, thanks for coming on the show. That's all we have for today. If you have any questions, please write them down below. This is Facebook. We're going to be monitoring those questions and answering them for the next couple of weeks. And on behalf of our entire crew, I'm Joe Ross for CNR News. Thank you for tuning in.